Hello and welcome to Story Verdict. Today I'm going to tell you the story of scrubbed floors for 20 years to fund his career. Husband kicked me out for his mistress because of my rude hands. He fainted when the military convoy arrived to salute their commander. The story goes like this. The first thing my husband did after 20 years of letting my hands build his life was hold them up before 300 guests and call them proof that I had never belonged beside him. Marcus stood beneath the crystal chandeliers of the Ashbourne Grand Ballroom in a midnight tuxedo, one arm wrapped around the waist of his mistress, while a camera projected my scarred fingers across the screens behind the stage. The ballroom smelled of white roses, expensive perfume, polished marble, and the champagne I had secretly paid for. Every table carried the silver crest of Mercer Dynamics, the technology company Marcus liked to say he had created from nothing. In reality, I had funded nearly every stage of its existence, from the first rented office to the defensive logistics platform he was preparing to sell for hundreds of millions of dollars. I had scrubbed floors, washed uniforms, repaired machinery, and accepted every insult that came with my public cover because my real work could never be discussed outside classified rooms. Marcus believed I had spent 20 years laundering military bedding and cleaning administrative buildings. He believed the roughness in my palms came from detergent, bleach, and cheap rubber gloves. He had never imagined those scars came from climbing broken concrete, carrying wounded soldiers, forcing open armored doors, and gripping weapons in places our government would never admit I had entered. "Look at these hands," he told the room, lifting my right wrist as though he were presenting damaged merchandise. "These are not the hands of a woman who can represent an international company. These are the hands of a laundress." A few guests laughed because Marcus had trained them to follow his confidence before checking whether his words deserved it. Others looked away. The woman beside him, Celeste, smiled with the delicate cruelty of someone who believed elegance was a moral achievement. Her hands were smooth, pale, and covered in diamonds. She was the daughter of a wealthy venture capitalist who had recently promised Marcus access to investors if he removed me from his public life. "Marcus," I said quietly, "let go of me." His fingers tightened. "You wanted to attend the anniversary celebration. Now everyone can see why I asked you to remain with the service staff." The screen behind him changed from a photograph of my hands to a video from earlier that evening. It showed me kneeling beside the ballroom entrance, wiping spilled champagne from the marble while Celeste stood over me in a gold dress. The guests did not know she had poured the glass deliberately. They did not know Marcus had ordered the facilities manager to give me a uniform and a mop because he said my dark coat and worn shoes would embarrass his investors. They only saw the image he wanted them to see. The founder's exhausted wife on her knees, while the woman replacing her looked born for the stage. Celeste tilted her head. "Elena has always been practical," she said into the microphone. "Some people are simply more comfortable serving than leading." I looked past them toward the giant windows overlooking the river. Rain struck the glass in long silver lines. Beyond the ballroom, the city lights blurred beneath the storm. Somewhere below, a military communications officer was waiting for a signal from the old black watch hidden beneath my cleaning glove. I had promised General Nathaniel Peters that I would activate the protocol only if Marcus publicly attempted the fraudulent transfer we had been investigating. I had also promised myself that I would not use military authority to punish adultery. Marcus could betray our marriage without committing a federal crime. He could humiliate me without losing his company. He could choose Celeste without becoming a criminal. But he had gone further. He had forged my signature, copied restricted technology, hidden investor losses, and built his anniversary gala around a financing agreement that required me to surrender ownership of the very trust that had kept him rich. I had returned to the ballroom not to discover who he was. I already knew. I had returned to give him one final opportunity to stop. He released my wrist and lifted a leather folder from the podium. "Tonight is not only the 10th anniversary of Mercer Dynamics," he announced. "It is the beginning of a more refined future." The screen displayed a photograph of Celeste standing beside him beneath the words strategic, partnership, and family leadership. My name appeared below in smaller letters beside the phrase legacy operations transition. Marcus opened the folder and removed divorce papers, a transfer agreement, and a medical declaration prepared by a physician who had never examined me. Elena and I have lived separate lives for years, he said. She has devoted herself to basic support work, while I have carried the responsibility of building this company. We have agreed that our marriage should end with dignity. I did not agree, I said. You will, he placed the papers before me. The settlement gives you $100,000, a small apartment for 12 months, and continued access to military health services. In return, you will surrender any claim against Mercer Dynamics, the Ashbourne estate, and the Meridian Defense Trust. A murmur moved through the room. Most guests had never heard of the Meridian Defense Trust. Marcus had told them he controlled the company outright. You forgot one document, I said. His smile tightened. What document? The one proving you own any of those assets? Celeste laughed. This is why Marcus wanted the conversation handled privately. Elena does not understand modern finance. I understand that the Ashbourne estate was purchased through the Athena Service Members Residential Trust, I said. I understand that Mercer Dynamics received 90% of its original financing from the Meridian Defense Investment Fund. I understand that the company's core routing technology was licensed conditionally from a classified logistics architecture. And I understand that you used an expired power of attorney to transfer trust assets into a shell company controlled by Celeste. The room became still. Marcus recovered quickly because he had spent years surviving through momentum. You saw account names on tax forms and invented a conspiracy. Then answer one question. Who is the beneficial founder of the Meridian Defense Investment Fund? A consortium of military investors. Which military investors? The identities are confidential. Convenient. He leaned toward me. Do not do this, Elena. You are confused and emotional. He raised the medical declaration. Your work history, physical exhaustion, and recent episodes of paranoia have caused legitimate concern. Dr. Wallace believes you may be experiencing trauma-related delusions. Dr. Wallace met me. He reviewed statements from family members. Which family members? Me. And Celeste? She has observed your instability. Celeste gave the room a sorrowful expression. Elena once accused me of stealing her husband simply because Marcus and I attended business dinners. You have been sleeping together for 11 months. The grief on her face disappeared. Marcus glanced toward the audience. This is exactly the behavior described in the assessment. You used my deployment absences as evidence that I had lost touch with reality. You do laundry for a military facility and disappear without explanation for months. You return with bruises, refuse to discuss your location, and claim confidential responsibilities. What conclusion should a reasonable husband reach? I slowly removed the black cleaning glove from my right hand. The old watch appeared beneath it. The face looked scratched and inexpensive, but the outer ring carried a secure pressure sensor linked to a command network Marcus had never known existed. A reasonable husband could ask whether his wife was safe, I said. A reasonable husband could request counseling, separation, or divorce. He would not forge her signature, steal protected designs, or ask an unlicensed doctor to declare her incompetent. Sign the papers, he said. No, then security will remove you. That happened already. The screen changed again. This time it showed me outside the ballroom doors an hour earlier, wearing the dark housekeeping uniform Marcus had ordered. Celeste stood beside a champagne tower while her assistant poured a glass onto the floor. She pointed toward the spill. Clean it, she had said. The real guests are arriving. When I refused, Marcus came from the lobby and lowered his voice. You have spent your whole life cleaning for soldiers. Do not pretend this is beneath you. I am your wife. Not for much longer. This company exists because of me. This company exists despite you. He pushed the mop into my hands. 20 years of rough hands have not taught you where you belong. I had knelt, not because he defeated me, but because the ballroom security cameras, trust investigators, and federal contracting officials needed the full record. Celeste's assistant had hidden the original footage, but the building belonged to a trust I founded. And our forensic team had preserved every camera stream before the gala began. Marcus stared at the screen. Turn that off. The image continued. Guests watched Celeste place the heel of her gold shoe on the wet marble, forcing me to clean around it while she laughed. I hope the detergent smell comes out before the photographers arrive, she had said. The recording ended. No one laughed now. Marcus turned toward his audiovisual director. I said, "Turn it off." The director raised both hands. "I'm not controlling the feed." I looked at my watch. "You should have read the financing agreements. You are threatening me with documents you do not understand." Section 14 of the Meridian Funding Covenant requires immediate preservation of records when executives attempt unauthorized transfer of protected assets. Section 19 suspends voting authority when fraud, coercion, or falsified medical incapacity is supported by credible evidence. Section 23 places the company under independent management if restricted technology is presented to investors without authorization. Celeste crossed her arms. "Marcus, stop letting her talk. She's stalling." "For what?" I pressed the watch crown once. A small vibrations confirmed that the final authorization had been transmitted. "For midnight," I said. The ballroom lights went out at exactly 12:01 a.m. The chandeliers vanished. The stage screens went black. Emergency lights glowed along the floor, turning the guests into pale silhouettes. Someone screamed near the champagne tables. Marcus shouted for security. Celeste grabbed his arm. Beyond the windows, the lights across the Ashbourne estate also disappeared, leaving only the storm, the river, and the faint red warning lamps on the roof. Then a low vibration moved through the marble floor. It began like distant thunder and grew steadily louder. Guests rushed toward the windows. Through the rain, headlights appeared along the private drive below. The first vehicles were black military police escorts. Behind them came armored command transports, federal investigative units, court-appointed receivers, and communications vehicles carrying the insignia of Strategic Readiness Command. 2 helicopters crossed the river at low altitude, their searchlights sweeping across the estate grounds. The ballroom emergency system restored partial power. Marcus stared through the glass. "What have you done?" I reported a breach involving protected military architecture. "This is a private company. A private company financed by a defense trust, using government-derived systems while seeking federal contracts through false representations. You called the military because I divorced you?" "I called no one because of the divorce." "Then why are armored vehicles surrounding my house?" "It is not your house." Celeste turned to Marcus. "You said the estate was owned outright." "It is. Then make them leave." "I need the legal team." His phone had lost access to the company network. He tried 3 times before looking at me. "Restore my account." "I do not control the receivership. You control whatever this is." I activated evidence preservation. "Independent authorities made the decisions. You expect me to believe you arranged all of this while folding sheets on a military base?" "I never folded military sheets. You told me you worked in laundry and logistics." "I told you my public assignment was laundry and logistics support. You decided that meant I had no authority." The ballroom doors opened. Military police entered first, not with weapons raised, but with cameras, warrants, and a disciplined silence that pushed the guests backward. Federal investigators followed. 2 court officers approached the podium and ordered Marcus to step away from the documents. The company's general counsel, who had spent the evening praising him, quietly surrendered his access badge. The head of security accepted a warrant and instructed his staff to cooperate. Marcus pointed toward me. "She is unstable. My wife has fabricated a military emergency to sabotage this company." The lead investigator, Special Agent Dana Cole, looked at the medical declaration on the podium. "Dr. Wallace has already admitted he prepared this opinion without examining Colonel Ward." Marcus froze. "Colonel?" Celeste whispered. "What does she mean, Colonel?" Before I answered, the ballroom doors opened again. General Nathaniel Peters entered wearing his full dress uniform, 4 stars visible on each shoulder. The room recognized him immediately. His image had appeared in defense magazines, congressional hearings, and military broadcasts for years. Marcus had spent 18 months trying to secure a private meeting with him. Celeste's father had promised that Peters would eventually endorse Mercer Dynamics if Marcus presented the company correctly. Marcus straightened his tuxedo and walked forward with one hand extended. "General Peters, thank God you're here. My wife has suffered some sort of breakdown. I believe she has misused military contacts to interfere with a private corporate event." General Peters did not look at his hand. He walked past him. Officers from Strategic Readiness Command entered behind him, followed by defense contracting officials, trust representatives, and a military legal team. Peters crossed the ballroom until he reached me. I was still wearing the housekeeping uniform, my hair tied back, my cleaning gloves hanging from one hand. His gaze moved to the scars across my palms, the faded watch, and the mop resting against the stage. "Commander," he said. "Report." Marcus made a small sound behind him. I stood straighter. "Possible theft of protected logistics architecture, fraudulent transfer of trust assets, coercive medical declaration, false investor disclosures, and unauthorized federal procurement claims. Building systems and financial records secured. No immediate threat to life. Injury status? Stable. Operational identity compromised? Yes. Public disclosure authorized? The mission compartment expired at midnight." Peters nodded. Then, in front of Marcus, Celeste. And the entire ballroom, the four-star general lowered himself onto one knee. The gesture was not required by any military regulation. It belonged to an older promise made after an operation neither Marcus nor Celeste had ever heard about. 22 years earlier, Peters had been a young major trapped inside a burning command station during a failed extraction. I had carried him through a collapsed tunnel after my left hand was crushed beneath a steel support. While we waited for evacuation, he promised that if either of us survived long enough to see our classified command dissolved, he would acknowledge the person who had brought his unit home. I had laughed and told him never to kneel before another officer. Nathaniel had always treated instructions as negotiable when sentiment was involved. He removed a black velvet case from inside his coat, opened it, and lifted the silver insignia of Joint Sentinel Command. "Colonel Elena Ward," he said, his voice carrying through the silent ballroom, "Commander of Sentinel Operations, architect of the Meridian Logistics Network, controlling founder of the Meridian Defense Trust, and senior operational advisor to Strategic Readiness Command, your final classified mission has concluded. On behalf of the officers who served under you and the lives protected by your command, I ask you to return to your rightful position." He fastened the insignia above my heart, rose, and saluted. Every active duty officer in the ballroom followed. The movement passed across the room like a wave. I returned the salute. My scarred hand did not shake. Marcus stared at me as though he had never seen my face. Celeste stepped away from him. "You said she was a laundress." "She told me she was." General Peters turned toward him. Colonel Ward's public cover involved administrative laundry and logistics oversight because civilian observation of her movements required a harmless explanation. She commanded special operations across multiple theaters, designed the logistics architecture your company copied, and directed missions whose existence remained classified until midnight. Marcus shook his head. "That is impossible. I have been married to her for 20 years. "Marriage is not a security clearance," Peters said. "She came home smelling like detergent. Because decontamination protocols required her team to process uniforms and equipment before returning from certain sites," he replied. "The smell you mocked may have kept chemical residue out of your home." Celeste stared at my hands. "And the scars?" "Not from scrubbing floors," I said. "Some are." I looked at the thickened skin near my thumb. "A commander still cleans when contamination enters a field hospital. Honest work was never the insult. Your contempt was." Marcus's face shifted from disbelief to calculation. "Even if she holds a military rank, the company remains mine. I founded Mercer Dynamics." Miriam Vale, chair of the Meridian Defense Trust, walked toward the stage carrying a set of binders. She was 70, silver-haired, and more intimidating than most armed officers. "You founded the corporate entity," she said. "Colonel Ward supplied the capital, intellectual property licenses, secured facilities, and debt guarantees through independently governed trusts. She gave me the money. No, the company received conditional financing. I am the majority shareholder. You held 52% of common shares. The Meridian Fund holds preferred voting rights, senior secured debt, and activation clauses triggered by fraud. Following tonight's unanimous independent vote, your executive authority is suspended. The receiver now controls the company pending court review. She owns the board. Colonel Ward recused herself from every enforcement vote involving you, because she knew the outcome. Because governance requires independence when personal anger creates conflict." Marcus pointed toward the convoy outside. "This is not governance. This is revenge. Your marriage is not part of the procurement suspension." The Defense Contract Integrity Director said, The review concerns concealed software failures, false claims of federal endorsement, unlicensed use of Meridian architecture, diversion of trust funds, and attempts to obtain investor capital using falsified ownership documents. The ballroom screen lit again. A technical report appeared. It showed Mercer Dynamics' flagship system, Guardian Path, beside an earlier military platform I had developed 15 years before. Entire sections matched, including 3 hidden notation markers used to identify unauthorized copies. Marcus turned toward his chief technology officer. You told me the architecture was public. The man's face had gone gray. You gave us files from Colonel Ward's locked study and said the rights belonged to the company. They were inside my house. Inside a secure cabinet marked Meridian Trust property, I said. You ordered the cabinet opened while I was deployed. Celeste's father, Laurent Capital founder Victor Laurent, stepped forward from the investor tables. Marcus assured us all ownership questions had been resolved through his wife's consent. Miriam opened the forged transfer document. This signature was copied from Colonel Ward's military beneficiary form. The digital notary certificate belonged to an attorney who died 9 days before the recorded date. Victor looked at Celeste. Did you know about this? Marcus said Elena had abandoned the marriage and signed everything before leaving. You received $8 million from the shell company that held the transferred assets, Agent Cole said. The account records show you purchased jewelry, a penthouse in Paris, and tonight's event services. Celeste's hand moved instinctively toward the diamond necklace at her throat. Those were gifts. The source of the funds remains under investigation. She removed her hand. Marcus turned on her. Do not say anything without a lawyer. You told me the money was yours. It was company compensation. You said Elena had no claim because she was mentally unfit. She hid her identity for 20 years. That does not make the signature real, Victor said. The alliance between them began collapsing in the same ballroom where they had intended to announce their future. Marcus grabbed the divorce papers and tore them in half. This changes nothing between us, he told me. You deceived me. Every year, every absence, every bruise, every classified call, you let me believe I was carrying this family alone. You were not carrying it, exactly. You watched me struggle while secretly controlling the money. I funded the company when banks refused. I paid the mortgage through the trust. I covered employee salaries during your failed expansion. I purchased the patent licenses you claimed to have negotiated, without telling me. The agreements were reviewed by your lawyers. No one told me you were behind them. You never asked because you preferred believing your confidence created money. You tested me. Yes, the admission unsettled him. Part of my secrecy was operational. Part of it became personal. I wanted to know whether you respected a wife you believed did ordinary work. That was unfair. He seized the statement immediately. Then this is your fault. No. My secrecy damaged our marriage. It did not force you to sleep with Celeste, forge my signature, steal technology, falsify medical evidence, or humiliate workers. You made me feel small. You felt small because every question sounded like disrespect. You could stop this. I cannot cancel warrants, receivership orders, or federal reviews. You command the people outside. I command military operations. I do not command courts. Call them off. That belief that power exists to erase consequence for family is how we reached this stage. Celeste moved toward the side exit. 2 agents stepped in front of her. Ms. Laurent. You are not under arrest, but a court order requires surrender of your passport and preservation of electronic devices. My father has diplomatic contacts. Victor looked at her. Do not use my name again tonight. Her face hardened. You invested too, based on false representations. You wanted access to defense contracts, and I will answer for my decisions. Marcus laughed bitterly. Look how quickly everyone becomes righteous after the convoy arrives. I looked toward the facility's staff gathered near the kitchen doors. They had watched the entire reveal without moving. Several had shared dinner with me before the gala began. They had treated me respectfully while believing I was a cleaner. Not everyone needed the convoy, I said. Marcus followed my gaze. Do not compare executives to janitors. General Peters answered before I could. Why not? Because witnesses require context. Witness value does not depend on salary. A facility supervisor named Rosa stepped forward cautiously. Mr. Mercer ordered Mrs. Ward to clean the ballroom floor after Miss Laurent poured champagne intentionally. Marcus snapped, You are an employee. Not yours, Rosa replied. The estate trust employs building staff. Miriam made a note. Marcus stared at her. You are taking testimony from cleaners? Agent Cole said. We take testimony from people who observed relevant conduct. This is absurd. Your contempt for people without visible power is not the central charge, I said. But it explains why engineers were afraid to report failures and why accountants stopped questioning transfers. The screen changed to an internal message from Marcus. Anyone who challenges Guardian Path before the launch is not loyal enough to remain at Mercer Dynamics. Another message instructed engineers to remove risk warnings involving civilian transport convoys during degraded satellite conditions. Preliminary systems fail, Marcus said. That is why we test them. You deleted the failed tests from the investor package because corrections were underway. Then disclose the corrections, the contracting director said. Instead, you claimed the platform had passed military validation. General Peters was scheduled to attend next month. Peters looked at him. A scheduled technical review is not endorsement. Your office knew our potential. My office knew your claims required investigation. You came here because Elena called you. I came because the classified compartment expired. The protected architecture was compromised. Federal officials confirmed false procurement representations. And the commander who once saved my life reported an active breach. Her marriage did not decide my duty. Marcus looked at the kneeling mark where Peters's uniform trousers had touched the stage. You knelt to her. I fulfilled a personal promise after her command status became public. So this is theater. Peters's expression cooled. Every ceremony is theater. The question is whether it represents truth. Your gala did not. Miriam informed Marcus that Mercer Dynamics would enter protective receivership immediately. Employees would continue receiving wages for at least 90 days. Active civilian projects would remain operational. Engineers uninvolved in fraud would be offered positions under independent management. Executive accounts were frozen pending forensic review, but lawful personal funds, clothing, medication, and legal expenses remained available. The company would not vanish at midnight because 400 employees did not deserve ruin for the crimes of their chief executive. Marcus had expected either victory or total destruction. Structured accountability confused him. What happens to the estate? He asked. The Athena Residential Trust holds title, Miriam said. Your occupancy agreement was conditioned on accurate financial reporting, no unauthorized collateral, and lawful use. A court has approved temporary management and evidence preservation. Formal possession review begins tomorrow. You are evicting me. Not tonight. You and Colonel Ward maintain separate legal rights pending the hearing. However, the gala is over. Corporate property will be inventoried, and disputed assets cannot be removed. This is my home. I looked at him. I purchased it because you once said your childhood apartment made you feel trapped. I thought giving you space would make you generous. Instead, you decided the house proved you had outgrown the person who's paid for it. You gave it to me. The trust granted conditional equity. You hide behind legal language. You hid behind documents you never read. Celeste stepped between us. Where am I supposed to go? You own an apartment in Paris purchased through disputed funds, Agent Cole said. Access depends on the court review. Marcus promised me this estate. He did not own it. She looked at him with open disgust. You told me Elena would leave with nothing. She was supposed to sign. You said the doctor's declaration would force her. Keep your voice down. There are federal agents in the room. I don't think volume is the issue anymore. He grabbed her wrist. Military police moved forward. He released her immediately. I built everything for you, he said. You built it for yourself, she replied. I was the woman you wanted displayed after the building was finished. You knew I was married. You said your wife was a servant who refused to understand your ambitions. And you believed me because you wanted the money. There is no money. There was before she activated this. Their future lasted less than 10 minutes after the source of its luxury became visible. I felt no pleasure watching them turn on each other. Revenge stories often end at the moment betrayers begin screaming. Real pain does not disappear because the people responsible finally experience fear. 20 years of marriage remained inside me. Marcus asleep beside me in a rented apartment. Marcus holding my hand outside the hospital after a miscarriage. Marcus laughing when our first kitchen ceiling leaked. Marcus promising he would never become like his father. who measured people by usefulness. Those memories did not become fake because he later betrayed them. They became evidence that a person can love you and still grow into someone unsafe. General Peters leaned toward me. "Your shoulder is bleeding." I looked down. A dark stain had spread beneath the housekeeping uniform near an old surgical wound reopened when Marcus's security guard twisted my arm earlier. A military medic approached. "I am fine, Commander," Peters said. That phrase has endangered more officers than enemy fire. I allowed the medic to guide me to a chair. She removed the uniform jacket and cleaned the wound while the ballroom continued emptying. Beneath the thin blouse, scars crossed my shoulder, ribs, and side. Marcus stared. "What happened to you? Which time? Those scars. Operations. You told me the shoulder injury came from a laundry machine. The official report required a workplace explanation." "Were you nearly killed?" "More than once." His expression changed briefly. "Why didn't you trust me?" "At first, regulations. Later, I saw how you spoke about people whose jobs seemed small. You never gave me the chance to understand. You had 20 years to respect the woman you believed cleaned uniforms. That is not the same as understanding a commander. It should have been enough to prevent cruelty." He looked at my hands. "I called them ugly. Yes." "I thought," he stopped. "What?" "I thought your hands proved I had escaped the life we started with. They funded the life you displayed. You scrubbed floors? Sometimes. After chemical exposure. Rank does not exempt anyone from decontamination. During humanitarian operations, I cleaned hospital rooms when staff collapsed from exhaustion. During my public cover, I worked enough real maintenance shifts to make the employment record credible. Honest labor was never shameful. Then why hide the money? Because the investment fund required confidentiality. And because I wanted your confidence to become character rather than dependence. You let me believe I was successful. You were capable. You were not self-made." His eyes filled with anger again. "You enjoyed knowing I needed you." "No. I made the mistake of believing rescue could remain invisible without becoming entitlement." The medic finished bandaging my shoulder. Marcus lowered his voice. "Elena, we can repair this. I will end things with Celeste. I will cooperate with the audit. We can tell everyone the divorce announcement was part of a publicity misunderstanding. You made a doctor call me incompetent. That was leverage. You copied my signature. The company was desperate. You forced me to clean for your mistress. I was angry. You displayed my hands like evidence of shame. I did not know who you were. The sentence silenced even him. I stood. You knew I was your wife." His face collapsed. Celeste was escorted to a private room for questioning. Marcus remained with attorneys and investigators. I walked toward the service corridor, where Rosa and the facilities team were collecting abandoned glasses. "Leave the ballroom for the receivers," I said. "You have worked enough." Rosa looked at the insignia on my chest. "Were you really commanding all those officers?" "Yes. You still helped us move chairs earlier. They were heavy." She smiled uncertainly. "Do we salute?" "Please don't." "Good. I wouldn't know how." I thanked the team and asked Miriam to ensure overtime, transportation, and counseling support were available for employees caught in the investigation. Then I stepped onto the terrace. The rain had slowed. Armored vehicles filled the drive below, but no one was shouting. The helicopters had landed on the estate's eastern lawn. Their rotors turned slowly beneath the storm lights. General Peters joined me. "The aircraft is ready," he said. "I am not leaving in a helicopter while Marcus stands inside believing I staged a royal extraction. You did not stage it. The internet will disagree by morning." The internet has never allowed facts to interfere with satisfaction. I need to remain for the statement. The legal team can handle it. This is my company too. Your trust. My people work there. Peters leaned against the railing. "Do you regret hiding everything?" "Yes. Would you disclose it all if you could begin again?" "No." Useful contradiction. Operational secrecy protected lives. Personal secrecy became a wall. I would build a door. Marcus still chose betrayal. "Yes. You are not required to assume responsibility for every moral failure that occurs near your silence. I trained commanders to examine conditions, not only individual guilt. Examine them. Do not adopt them." He looked toward the ballroom. "Do you want him imprisoned?" "Tonight, part of me wants him to wake with nothing. And tomorrow? I want accurate charges, protected employees, recovered assets, and systems that do not depend on my anger. That is why you remain the commander. You knelt in front of everyone. I told you 22 years ago I would. I told you not to. You were under anesthesia. I was giving excellent instructions. You called the field surgeon a coward for refusing to operate during incoming fire. He operated. Because I convinced him, not because you insulted him. History is written by senior officers. Now I am the senior officer. We almost laughed. The sound caught in my throat. Peters became quiet. Are you all right? No. Good, good. People who feel triumphant after the collapse of a 20-year marriage are usually lying or dangerous. I watched Marcus through the glass. His tuxedo jacket had been removed. He sat at a table surrounded by lawyers. Suddenly smaller without the stage. I thought the reveal would make the betrayal simple, I said. Nothing makes family simple. The room went silent when you recognized me. They should have gone silent when he humiliated a cleaner. Exactly. Some did. Not enough. Then use what happened to change the next room. At 4 a.m, Marcus was formally arrested on preliminary charges of wire fraud, forgery involving federally connected trust documents, theft of protected technology, obstruction, and false procurement representations. He was not dragged away in his pajamas. Agents allowed him to change into ordinary clothing, contact counsel, and surrender his devices. Celeste was released pending further investigation after surrendering her passport. Her father refused to let her stay at his hotel suite and instructed his attorneys to cooperate with asset recovery. She left in the gold dress she had worn while standing over me with the champagne glass. Without the cameras and diamonds, she looked less like a villain than a frightened woman who had mistaken proximity to ambition for security. Before she entered the car, she approached me. Did you know about us before tonight? For 3 months. Why didn't you confront Marcus? Investigators were tracing the transfers. Did you let me humiliate you for evidence? I gave you the freedom to choose your conduct in a recorded room. That sounds cruel. It was controlled. You wanted to see whether I would do it. I already knew what you had done privately. Tonight established what you would do publicly. She looked toward the estate. Was any of it real? Your relationship? The life. The furniture is real. The house is real. The money moved through real accounts. Ownership was the illusion. Marcus loved me. Perhaps. Do you hate me? No. Why not? Hatred would require more space than I am willing to give you. Her eyes hardened. You think you are better than me. No, I think I am finished speaking with you. She entered the car. At dawn. I walked through the Ashbourne estate alone. The ballroom looked like the aftermath of a battle fought with contracts instead of weapons. Champagne glasses stood half full. White roses had begun to wilt beneath the emergency lights. The giant screen still displayed the procurement suspension notice. Near the entrance, the mop remained where I had left it. I picked it up and returned it to the facilities cart. That photograph later became famous. The secret commander in a housekeeping uniform putting away a mop while armored vehicles waited outside. Commentators called it the moment I reclaimed my throne. I had never wanted a throne. I wanted the equipment returned to the people responsible for cleaning it. Miriam met me in Marcus's study with the preliminary receivership plan. Mercer Dynamics would continue operating. Employees uninvolved in fraud would retain salaries. The Guardian Path platform would be suspended until independent testing proved it safe. The protected architecture would be removed. Patents created lawfully by company engineers would remain with the restructured business. Meridian Trust would convert part of the debt into an employee ownership program. You could liquidate, Miriam said. The assets would cover most losses. And 400 employees, they would enter the market, protect them. That reduces recovery. The fund can absorb it. This is why founders should not attend enforcement meetings after emotional trauma. I am not deciding Marcus's fate. You are prioritizing workers. They did not forge my signature. Agreed. She closed one binder. The estate? Keep it under trust management until the court resolves occupancy. Do you want to live here? No. Sell? Eventually. Use? I looked toward the ballroom. Convert part of it into a transition center for returning service members and their families until sale. Classified absences destroy relationships when people have no support. You are building a program from your own wound. Most useful programs begin there. Make sure you do not build a monument. No chandeliers? Good. The criminal case lasted almost 4 years. Marcus initially claimed I had manipulated the military, the trust. and the courts to punish him for infidelity. His attorneys portrayed me as a secretive commander who had engineered a loyalty test by pretending to be poor. Some of their argument was emotionally true. I had hidden power. I had allowed him to believe the support came from investors he impressed. I had watched his character change without forcing the financial structure into daylight, but the court did not try him for hurting my feelings. It examined forged signatures, false incapacity declarations, diverted trust funds, copied technology, concealed system failures, and fraudulent investor claims. Emails showed Marcus instructing engineers to remove risk warnings before the gala. Messages between him and Celeste discussed placing me under temporary guardianship if I refused to sign the ownership transfer. In one message, Marcus wrote, "Elena has scrubbed floors her whole life. She will fold when people with real status question her." That sentence became more damaging than any photograph of General Peters kneeling. It proved he believed dignity depended on visible influence and designed his fraud around my apparent powerlessness. Marcus accepted a plea agreement before the second trial phase. He pleaded guilty to conspiracy, wire fraud, technology theft, falsifying federal procurement materials, and attempted coercive transfer of protected assets. He received 9 years in federal custody, restitution obligations, and a permanent prohibition from serving as an executive in federally contracted companies. He did not lose every lawful possession. His personal retirement account, clothing, family photographs, and inheritance remained protected. The court seized assets traceable to fraud. The distinction disappointed people who wanted him thrown into the street, but justice is not stronger when it becomes inaccurate. Celeste pleaded guilty to receiving and concealing fraud proceeds and making false statements to investors. She cooperated, returned jewelry and property, and served 14 months in a minimum security facility followed by supervised release. Her father removed her from Laurent Capital and established an independent compliance board. Years later, she worked in event management under another name. We never spoke again. Mercer Dynamics survived. The company was renamed Sentinel Meridian Technologies after employees rejected both Marcus's surname and mine. The employee trust acquired 40% ownership. Engineers rebuilt Guardian Path into a civilian disaster routing platform used during wildfires, floods, and hospital evacuations. The military never purchased the original version. That outcome satisfied me more than corporate destruction would have. Marcus had wanted to create a system powerful enough to make him indispensable. The employees created one useful enough to help strangers without remembering him. The Ashbourne estate remained under trust control for 2 years. I refused to sleep in the bedroom Marcus and Celeste had shared. Instead, I stayed in a small guest room near the service corridor while legal teams completed the inventory. We converted the ballroom into a temporary reintegration center for military families. The chandeliers remained because removing them would have wasted money, but the stage disappeared. Counselors used the space for family briefings. Service members returning from classified assignments received financial reviews, communication support, and independent legal advice. Spouses received verified information about the nature of operational silence without learning restricted details. No family was told to simply trust a person who vanished for months. Trust without structure had nearly destroyed mine. We called the program Open Door, not Honor Protocol. Honor sounded like medals and convoys. Doors required hinges, maintenance, and people willing to open them. My divorce from Marcus was finalized 18 months after the gala. The court divided lawful marital assets, separated trust property, and invalidated the forged transfer. He wrote to me from custody during the 2nd year. His first letter blamed my secrecy. He said he had spent 2 decades living beside a stranger who returned from unknown places with bruises and expected him not to ask questions. He said every anonymous investment had made him believe he was finally becoming the man I secretly wanted. "You watched me build confidence on a lie," he wrote. "Then you used the truth to destroy me." I did not answer. His second letter was angrier. He accused Peters of humiliating him by kneeling. He said the military convoy had transformed a private marital failure into a public execution. I returned the letter unopened after reading the first page. His fourth letter arrived nearly a year later. "I knew you were more than a laundry worker," it began. "I did not know the rank, company ownership, or trust, but I knew important people returned your calls. I knew your wounds were not ordinary. I told myself the mysteries meant you were ashamed of me. Every time money arrived after I failed, I treated it as proof that my ideas were destined to succeed. I never asked who absorbed the cost. Celeste admired the version of me that existed without questions. You asked questions because you understood the systems. I chose admiration over evidence. He admitted ordering the forged medical declaration. I wanted your silence to become proof of incompetence. I believed your rough hands meant you could not fight me in the rooms that mattered. He asked whether I believed he had ever loved me. I answered once. Yes, love existed. It did not prevent entitlement, fear, cruelty, or crime. Complete your sentence, repay what you can, protect former employees by telling the truth, change without expecting access to me as proof. He never asked for reconciliation again. During his 6th year in custody, he helped investigators identify a network of attorneys who used fraudulent incapacity claims to seize deployed service members' property. His cooperation reduced no sentence because the plea agreement already set the terms, but it protected other families. I acknowledged the work through his attorney. After release, he found employment managing inventory for a regional manufacturing warehouse. He was no longer permitted to lead federally contracted businesses, but he was not forbidden from building an honest life. A reporter asked whether I was disappointed that my former husband had not been permanently blacklisted. No, I said. Accountability should protect the future, not eliminate the possibility of one. General Peters retired 3 years after the gala. At his ceremony, he introduced me as the commander who had taught him that logistics was the difference between courage and survival. He did not mention the anniversary party, the housekeeping uniform, or the night he knelt. Afterward, I asked why he had finally learned restraint. Retirement has made me humble, he said. It has made you less interesting. You kept the photograph. Which photograph? Me kneeling. It is evidence of insubordination. It is evidence of gratitude. The internet thinks you restored me to a billionaire throne. The internet also thinks military helicopters repossessed the estate. They did land on the lawn. Because the road flooded. Facts with dramatic lighting become mythology. He laughed. Did the gesture help? I considered the question. For one moment, it broke the story Marcus built, and afterward, it created another false story. People thought his treatment became wrong because I was secretly important. You were important. A laundress would have been important. Yes, Rosa understood that before the officers arrived. Then why call me? Because the technology breach required command notification. That is the official answer. And because my husband displayed my hands like garbage and part of me needed someone who remembered what they had carried. Peters nodded. That is the honest answer. I am not proud of needing the spectacle. Do not confuse need with design. You activated a legal protocol. I chose the spectacle. You always did. It kept you from becoming unbearable. 4 stars gave you too much confidence. You funded the room. I funded your rescue 22 years earlier. With those rough hands, we became friends outside command. He visited Open Door and listened to spouses describe the cost of classified silence. One woman said her husband returned from missions expecting intimacy to resume without explanation. A service member said his wife treated every unanswered question as betrayal. Peters admitted military culture often praised secrecy without funding the emotional systems required to survive it. We expanded the program nationally. Long-term class personnel received mandatory independent financial oversight, updated powers of attorney, family liaison support, and post-deployment counseling. Property transfers required live identity confirmation. Medical incapacity declarations could not rely only on a spouse's statement. Security contractors could not access family records without disclosure. Those policies never appeared in sensational retellings of the gala, but they prevented more harm than the convoy. I remained in command for 5 additional years. My hands never became soft. Nerve damage made 2 fingers stiff in cold weather. Scars faded but did not disappear. During official events, people sometimes stared at them after hearing the story. A senator once called them the hands that built an empire. I corrected him. Engineers, soldiers, custodians, nurses, accountants, and employees built the systems. My hands carried part of the work. He looked disappointed because speeches prefer one hero. I had learned that single hero stories often hide the people who absorb the cost. When I retired, I transferred most of my voting interest in the Meridian Trust into a permanent employee, veteran, and public benefit structure. No spouse, commander, political official, or future relative could inherit unilateral control. Advisors warned me that I was giving away a family legacy. I had seen what happened when family love and hidden ownership occupied the same house. Governance was a better legacy than personal power. I retained enough income for a comfortable life but sold the Ashbourne estate after Open Door moved to a purpose-built campus. The buyer converted it into a medical technology institute. The marble ballroom became a research hall. I requested one condition in the sale. Facilities staff received employment offers before executives. Rosa became director of building operations. The mop from the gala was not preserved. A museum asked for it and I refused. Ordinary tools should not become sacred because a powerful person once touched them. I donated the black watch, the forged medical declaration, and a copy of the original investment covenant to the Open Door Training Center. The display included no diamonds, uniforms, or photographs of the convoy. A plaque read, "Her work mattered before anyone knew her rank." Visitors often photographed the sentence. Few photographed the legal documents beside it, though the documents explained how to protect themselves. In retirement, I taught leadership ethics at the Joint Defense College. My course examined secrecy, financial control, family dependence, and the danger of confusing sacrifice with permanent consent. During the final class, I showed students the message Marcus wrote about my rough hands. "What failed first?" I asked. A captain answered, "The marriage. Earlier. Transparency." Earlier. A young logistics officer raised her hand. He believed repeated support gave him ownership over the person providing it. Yes, and you believed hidden support could create confidence without creating dependency. Also yes. So both of you built the conditions. Conditions are not equal to choices. My secrecy and financial rescuing weakened boundaries. Marcus chose fraud, coercion, and cruelty. Could telling him your rank have stopped it? It might have changed his behavior. Then why not tell him? Because operational rules limited disclosure, and because I wanted to be loved without authority. Was that a test? Yes. Was it fair? No. Did he still fail something real? Yes. Students disliked the answer because training scenarios promise clean responsibility. Family systems rarely offer it. I ended the course with the same principle every year. The moral test is not how you treat someone who may return with power. It is how you treat them when you believe they cannot answer. Years later, I visited the rebuilt Ashbourne Institute during a technology safety conference. I wore a plain navy coat and carried no visible identification. A young event coordinator directed me toward the service entrance because keynote speakers used the main lobby. I followed her instructions. Before entering, the institute director recognized me and rushed across the courtyard apologizing. "Colonel Ward, you are the honored guest." The coordinator's face became pale. "I'm so sorry, I didn't know. You followed the list," I said. Nothing wrong happened. The director tried to move me to the front entrance. "The cameras are waiting." Then let them wait. I entered through the service hall, where Roses greeted me with coffee. "You always arrive through the wrong door," she said. "Doors do not have rank. This one sticks in winter." We walked into the former ballroom together. The chandeliers remained, but the stage had been replaced by work tables. Engineers demonstrated emergency routing systems developed from the redesigned Guardian Path platform. A young technician presented an error she had discovered during testing. Her supervisor praised her for delaying the launch. That moment meant more to me than watching Marcus lose control. The company had finally learned that inconvenient truth protected lives. After the conference, Rosa and I stood near the place where Celeste had poured champagne. "Do you remember cleaning here?" she asked. "Yes. People think we knew who you were. You didn't. No, you were just the woman Marcus was treating badly. That should have been enough. It was." General Peters died several years later after a short illness. His medical directive was precise, independent, and impossible for family members to alter. At his bedside, he joked that years of working with me had taught him to prepare for hostile paperwork. "You carried me once," he said. "Do not carry me beyond the line I wrote. I will follow the order. You hated my orders, only the dramatic ones." The kneeling was excellent. "You embarrassed a 4-star uniform. I improved it." "Did you serve well?" I asked. His humor faded. "Most days. Then yes. Did I help you that night? Yes. Would you have survived without the convoy? Yes. That was not the question. You reminded the room that hidden sacrifice existed. And the wrong lesson? I spent the rest of my life correcting it. He smiled faintly. Good use of retirement. He died with his hand in mine. At the funeral, senior officers saluted his coffin. I stood with his family in civilian clothes. No one knelt. Afterward, his daughter gave me a sealed note. Peters had written, Elena, stop apologizing for the moment you needed to be seen. Visibility did not create your worth, but it gave you permission to stop treating invisibility as the price of love. Build systems where the next person does not need a general. I kept the note beside the old black watch. Marcus sent one final letter after Peters's death. He had completed his sentence and worked quietly for several years. I saw the memorial broadcast, he wrote. The general who knelt before you is gone. And I realized I spent my life believing important people were those who could change my circumstances. I treated you badly when I believed you were powerless and respected Peters when I believed he could give me contracts. Rosa and the staff showed more character than I did because they treated you as a person before knowing the consequences. I lost the marriage before I forged the signature. The forgery only made the loss visible. He did not ask for a response. I wrote one anyway. That understanding does not restore what we had, but it is not nothing. Continue building a lawful life. We never met again. Forgiveness did not require reunion. I no longer wanted him punished beyond the sentence he served. I also no longer wanted him close enough to test whether he had changed. Boundaries can remain after anger ends. In my 70s, nerve damage worsened, and I could no longer fasten small buttons easily. A young caregiver at Open Door helped me dress for a memorial event. She noticed my hands and asked whether they hurt. Sometimes. Were they really from special operations? Some scars? And cleaning? Some calluses. Which ones matter more? Why would one kind of work matter more? She thought for a moment. Because one sounds heroic. Heroism is often ordinary work performed while people are frightened. She fastened the final cuff. Do you miss commanding? I miss being useful. You are useful here. That answer means you are safe from promotion. She laughed. At the memorial, an organizer seated me beside maintenance workers because the front rows were reserved for decorated officers. Before anyone recognized me, I spoke with a custodian named James about arthritis treatments and floor cleaning machines. When an aide finally discovered the seating error, he became horrified. Commander Ward, your place is on stage. My place is on the seating chart you printed. The general staff is waiting. They have chairs. James looked between us. You're that commander, apparently. The convoy lady, unfortunately. He laughed so hard he had to sit down. I went to the stage because refusing would create another performance. During my speech, I looked at the officers, donors, workers, and families. Most people humiliated for rough hands are not secret commanders, I said. Most cleaners mistreated at galas will not summon armored vehicles. Most spouses betrayed after decades of sacrifice will not discover they own the company. They should not need those reversals. Decency is not an investment made because the person before you might later become powerful. It is the minimum owed when you believe they never will. No one applauded immediately. That silence felt better than applause because it suggested thought rather than reflex. Then James began clapping from the side table, and the rest of the room followed. In my final years, Open Door expanded into a national network. It served military families, emergency workers, hospital staff, intelligence personnel, and anyone whose hidden labor created dangerous dependence at home. The program taught returning workers to communicate without violating security, spouses to seek support without turning uncertainty into entitlement, and families to separate love from access to money. Legal teams reviewed powers of attorney. Financial advisors created transparent structures. Therapists taught people that sacrifice did not create permanent debt, and support did not purchase obedience. On the 20th anniversary of the gala, the network asked whether it could display the housekeeping uniform I wore. I agreed only if it appeared beside uniforms worn by actual cleaners, medics, mechanics, and laundry staff. The exhibit used no photograph of Peters kneeling. Instead, it showed my scarred hands beside Rosa's hands, an engineer's hands, and the hands of a medic who served during chemical decontamination. The plaque read, "Hands do not become honorable after power recognizes them. They were already honorable because of what they carried, repaired, cleaned, protected, and refused to abandon. School groups visited the exhibit. One child asked why my husband hated my hands. The guide answered, he thought smooth hands meant success. The child looked at the photographs, but he needed her hands to get rich. Yes, that was stupid. Children often reach moral clarity before adults train them to search for profitable exceptions. I stood at a distance and smiled. That evening I returned to my small house near the open-door campus. Rain tapped against the windows. The old black watch rested on my desk beside Peters's note. I placed my hands beneath the lamp. The scars had faded to pale lines. The fingers were stiff, and the knuckles had swollen with age. Marcus once believed these hands made me unfit to stand beside him while he signed million-dollar contracts. Celeste believed they identified a servant. Investors believed they were invisible until military vehicles filled the drive. General Peters believed they belonged to the commander who had carried him from fire. Rosa believed they belonged to a tired woman who needed dinner. Of all those judgments, Rosa's came closest to the truth. I had been a commander, investor, founder, wife, cleaner, rescuer, and wounded soldier. None of those roles alone defined me. My greatest mistake was believing love could remain pure if I concealed every source of power. My greatest victory was not revealing the truth. It was learning to live without requiring another person's recognition. The military convoy arrived at 12:01. The helicopters crossed the river. A 4-star general knelt before me. Marcus lost his company, his mistress, the estate, and the future he had staged beneath chandeliers. Those events became the title strangers remembered. The life beneath the title was quieter. Employees kept their jobs. Engineers corrected dangerous systems. Fraud went through courts. Marcus served his sentence and rebuilt modestly. Celeste returned stolen property. Peters completed his promise and later allowed me to complete mine. Open-door protected families I would never meet. My hands remained rough. The difference was that I stopped hiding them beneath gloves to make other people comfortable. I once scrubbed floors because contamination threatened wounded soldiers. I scrubbed them because my cover required ordinary work. I scrubbed them at Marcus's gala because I wanted evidence of what he would do when he believed I had no power. In the years afterward, I stopped viewing that image as humiliation. Kneeling with a mop did not make me small. Marcus's need to place me there made him small. A person's dignity is not located in whether they stand on stage or clean beneath it. It lives in whether they refuse to make another human being invisible. My scarred hands built systems, carried bodies, signed investments, held frightened soldiers, cleaned blood, and eventually let go of a marriage that had mistaken sacrifice for weakness. They did not turn the castle to ash. They opened its locked doors, removed the lies from its foundation, and allowed something more honest to be built where the performance had collapsed. Goodbye.